And I have to live with that last conversation for the rest of my life. And all the should've, woulda, coulda, how that conversation should have been different, how I should have told her, "No, Jessica, don't stay there." That night when she said, "Oh, I'm gonna we had a talk and, you know, we're gonna talk again in the morning. He's gonna I'm staying here. He's gonna let me stay here the night. And then, like, I'll call you in the morning, Britt." Basically saying, they were gonna talk, kind of figure out the issue because, infidelity with him, my sister was adamant that he was cheating, which, surprise, surprise, he's a compulsive cheater. He can't help it. He's like a sex addict. He's addicted to porn, stuff like that, which she did obviously not know going into this because she got married in like a month. So yeah, that last conversation just wrecks my soul every day.
That's Brittany Lloyd, who's been searching for answers in the death of her sister Jessica Lloyd, who was found dead in a canal in Coral Springs, Florida, after a domestic dispute with her husband. This is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. I'm Jason Blair. Just before 9 p.m. on August 25th, near their home on Northwest 15th Court in Coral Springs, Florida, Jeffrey Evans, a 43-year-old former firefighter, called 911, claiming his wife was having a mental breakdown. A few minutes later, a neighbor also called 911, saying that he heard a woman screaming, "My husband is trying to kill me." When the police arrived, they found Jessica Lloyd's body in a canal behind their home. Law enforcement would later say that Evans told the police that they had had an argument earlier in the day, but later made up. Then, a short time later, he said he could not find his wife inside their home and went outside to look for her. He would tell the police that Jessica was running across the street, screaming for help. It remains unclear how Jessica ended up in the canal, but according to court filings and other public records, Evans had 2 previous domestic violence cases in 2020 and 2021. One of those cases was dismissed. In the other case, the state attorney declined to file formal charges. Those incidents occurred before he married Jessica in 2024. By the time of Jessica's death, they had been married for roughly 1 year, but Jessica's family had concerns. After the death of Gabby Petito, 2 of her parents, Jim and Nicole Schmidt, have been guides for me in better understanding domestic violence. One thing that I learned from Jim when he was talking to a group of us in Minneapolis in December 2024 was about the complexity of trying to help someone in the midst of a domestic violence situation. He talked with us about how trying to help can make things worse. For example, giving ultimatums to a person who's receiving ultimatums on a regular basis may push them closer to their abuser. Jim talked to us about listening without judgment, offering emotional support, sharing resources, helping them create a safety plan, and respecting their decisions, and recognizing that even in the best case scenario, you may not be able to save a loved one from domestic violence. More than 12 million people in the United States each year face rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. That's more than 3% of the population each year, or put in another way, 1 out of every 28 Americans annually. Over the course of a lifetime, 35.6% of women and 28.5% of men experience rape, physical abuse, stalking from an intimate partner. Domestic homicides more than doubled between 2019 and 2024, rising to 2,339 from 1,065. The latest data has experts worried. We clearly need to talk about this more. There's no question this is a public health crisis. There's no question that this is a criminal justice crisis. And there's no question about domestic violence and domestic violence homicides disproportionately affecting women. These crimes get covered when they're sensational crimes, but why are we not covering the epidemic? Why are we not covering the conversation going on in every household every day? Stigma and shame may play a role, fear of retaliation, underreporting, fear that the police will do nothing, normalization, minimization, friends and family not being armed with the tools to know what to say or what to do, systemic failures, domestic violence rarely receiving sustained media attention. I could go on. Jessica's mom has said that her daughter became increasingly isolated after marrying Evans. Her mom described him as, quote, scary, very odd, and very forceful. Compounding the sadness is that Jessica's family has not gotten many answers from law enforcement about what happened to her. Evans was charged with domestic violence battery after the Coral Springs police said he admitted to touching Jessica against her will during the dispute that preceded her death. It appears the police have not ruled out the possibility of upgraded charges as the investigation continues. Jessica Lloyd was a nurse who was described as a joyful and adventurous person, with one person calling her, quote, a happy little soul before her marriage to Evans. Today, I'm joined by Brittany Lloyd, who has been advocating for her sister since her death and is looking to bring awareness to the topic and find answers in her sister's case. Brittany, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I had heard about you and your sister's case, really more about you, from a listener of mine, Christina Byington. She had just pointed out to me, Jason, you really need to talk to this girl because she is struggling to navigate this system on one part, and also that she needs help for her sister, and that she has such a powerful story and a powerful voice. And, so I watched a bunch of your videos. I listened to some interviews you did. And I think the thing that took me aback was so soon after you lost your sister, you've already become such an articulate advocate for her.
Thank
and
you.
are really honoring both honoring her and also, I think, really being a guidepost for other people who are going through difficult things. So I was grateful to Christina and grateful to you for agreeing to come on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And Christina has been honestly the best person.
Mhm.
She found me and she's been going through this with me and helping me as much as she can because she's navigating still what she's going through as well.
Yeah. I think it's 1991 she lost her
Yeah.
cousin.
Yeah.
It's been a while. And, I think you were making the point before we started recording that grief and loss are sort of a never-ending thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's forever.
yeah. And you also made another point that I think is really key, that it's hard to understand what it's like to go through any kind of loss
Mhm.
until you've walked in someone's shoes. But I think the great thing about having conversations like this is that it gives us more insight, and us being able to have more insight gives us avenues to help and avenues to not accidentally do harm and to really sort of just care in the best possible ways we can.
Yes, I've been trying my best to figure all this out as I go. It's a struggle,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, it's I mean, because I'm only 3 months and a week or something like that, 2 weeks, 106 days, and it honestly still feels like this can't be true. Like it feels like a horror movie. There's still that small. I'm a very logical, level-headed person. So knowing that, your loved one is gone, there's still this part, there's small part in your brain that's like, no, no, no. Like you're gonna see them again. She's gonna answer those 30 texts that you sent and the phone calls and stuff. I'm assuming it's probably some kind of coping mechanism your brain does to help you through this,
Mhm.
but it's wild.
Well, and I mean, I think there are different ways to look at it. I think there is sort of like a psychological coping mechanism that we all have. Like, you know, one person whose sister went missing said to me, like, the one thing you can't do is lose hope.
Mhm.
And, hope when someone's died, you know, it might be about justice. It might be about seeing them again someday, you know, whether you believe in God or some other spiritual framework. But I think we do find ways to hold on to hope or to remember people. And as painful as those moments can be, I think um, it's almost like you wouldn't want to go without them. Then there's the other sort of like, I think, more spiritual side of it, which would sort of argue that maybe they are still with us on some level. I remember talking to a guy who was a paranormal investigator, and I said, I didn't believe in ghosts, had no belief in ghosts. Well, when I was a kid, I did. Had no belief in ghosts until a couple weeks after my mom died. And I was laying on my couch, and it was dark. And I was feeling like a lot of anxiety. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice say, Jay, it's going to be okay.
Mm.
And it was as real. I wasn't like half asleep. It was as real as if she were in the room. And I know she wasn't. But like in some ways, like those moments, we're carrying them with us, right?
Yeah.
The memory of them
Mhm.
is in our brain, and they're still here because we're here, you know?
Right.
And I think about it as, you know, the first death for anyone is when they die, and then the second death is when they're forgotten. And I think there's something to be said for honoring them and continuing
Mhm.
to talk talk about them. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, um, a lot of times when we talk about people who are in the middle of some kind of horrible crime, we tend to focus on the crime, the events immediately before, and the events afterward. And I don't think we spend enough time talking about who they were and how they lived. And I'm just curious. I read a lot about your sister, and people called her intelligent, beautiful, but like the resounding theme was her love for other people. Like
Yeah.
that just kept on coming up in her work, um, and not just in her work nursing, but in many other spots. I forget who it was, but somebody called her a happy little soul, and I thought that was just a great description in thinking about all the other things I read. What
Yeah.
what was your sister like?
Oh, man, I could talk about her so long. Um, you know, Jessica was such a deeply kind person. There's a reason that there's just an overwhelming amount of people that just have nothing but positive, kind things to say about her because she was such a positive, kind person. You know, every place that she worked in, everyone adored her. And, Jessica worked in the service industry. It's grueling industry. She was a bartender for, oh my gosh, since I would say well over a decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that takes a lot.
I definitely couldn't make a week.
Though.
I'd be ready to toss people out the windows.
But, she had regulars that adored her. Everyone she worked with adored her. Even her as a nurse, because, she did the accelerated nursing program at Kaiser University. And I ran into some of her classmates at the vigil that was the end of last month. And, people drove down for hours to come to a vigil that was only like an hour because they cared about her so much. Her teachers from Kaiser University, it's just, she was such a sweet, beautiful person inside and out. I mean, she was absolutely gorgeous. And a lot of the times you have very pretty women who maybe aren't the nicest people out there because they're just, their good looks just kind of, you know. But no, she was such a kind, sweet person. She was a great sister and she was very protective of me. And we had a great childhood. We did a lot of trips, and my sister loved to eat. That girl loved her food. I remember growing up, she would be half asleep at the kitchen table, hunched over, eyes closed, shoveling cereal in her mouth. She loved Mexican food and margaritas and traveling. She went to so many different places, the Grand Canyon, New York, the Bahamas. She went out of the country a few times. I mean, this girl was like jumping off of cliffs and rock climbing.
So she really was
She
adventurous.
loved life so much, and she lived it so fully and so completely.
And it really sounds like, from what you're saying, just thinking about that example of people driving hours to go to a hour vigil, that she left an indelible mark on people.
Oh, deeply. People came there that she worked with 15 years ago,
Wow.
10 years ago, from Big Bear, from Tijuana Taxi, so people that she hadn't seen in many, 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 many years who weren't really friends with her but knew her. And she left such a lasting impression on people that weren't even, close friends, but they just adored her because of how kind and a genuinely good person she was. The world needed more of my sister, not less.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? Where'd you guys grow up?
So we grew up here in Hollywood,
Okay.
Florida. We
Yeah.
grew up I'm still in the same house that we grew up in.
Oh, wow.
She super athletic, a great swimmer. She could hold her, and we have a fairly large pool. She could hold her breath and swim underwater 4 laps of our pool.
Wow.
She could outrun me, outswim me. She could hold her breath longer than me. She was just, she was a great older sister.
How far apart are you guys in age?
Well, I'm 36, she's 38. So just
Okay.
just a little smidgen,
Just a little bit. That's
little
what
less
me and
than
my
2
brother-
years. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In a weird way, like when you're that close, you might as well be the same age, because
Yeah.
when you're the younger sibling, when you're really little, your older siblings sort of taking you along, you become friends with older people. Like
Mhm.
in a weird way, you're sort of like, I always call it, like, because my brother, we were separated twins. We ended up having like a lot of the same experiences together and new experiences because of our different personalities. And I just can't imagine something like losing my brother.
I know.
Can't.
When my friend lost her brother, I was her first phone call that she made. And it was that day, I immediately after I hung up with her, I called my sister. My sister was my first phone call after that. And I told her, like, I love you. This is crazy. Like, I can't imagine losing you. And it's just so surreal that 8 years later, I'm in the same boat as my friend Cheyenne. And from that day, my greatest fear in life was losing my sister.
Oh, wow. And is Cheyenne still in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She ended up moving a few hours away. So, when people move away, you kind of lose touch and everything. But we have now gotten back in touch. So Jessica has now brought people
You two
back in
back
my
together.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. And to think about that, sort of like the cycle of life, she brings people to you as she's going, but also the loss of Cheyenne's brother.
Yeah.
The loss of Cheyenne's brother brought someone to you too who can help you in a moment
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And so your sister, after she went off to college, she went off to Kaiser, you mentioned. That was later, right? She went to school later.
That was just recently. She
Okay.
graduated Kaiser University in 2023.
Oh, wow.
Just like it's so heartbreaking because she didn't want to be a bartender anymore. She wanted a career for herself. She wanted to help people, and to be a nurse, it takes a very specific kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I could never do it. I am not cut out to be a nurse. That is not for me. But my sister was like, you know what? I want to help people. So she did that. Nursing school in general is incredibly difficult. And she did the accelerated nursing program.
Mm.
And it's about, I think, 18 months. It's grueling. And
With all the rotations too, and
she was. Yep, she was doing rotations at hospitals, and she still managed to graduate just under 4.0. And I'm talking like she was like 100th, like 200th of a percent. Like she should have just gotten the 4.0. Come on, Kaiser. You could have. Come on. It wasn't even a 10th. It was like 100th. Ridiculous. But, she was highly intelligent. This was a very smart woman. And so she had just graduated. She was like, finally, I'm done. I can stop being so stressed out. And she was working at the hospital, doing really well. They adored her there. Of course they did. The patients loved her. She loved her job. So it's really tragic and it's heartbreaking that she never really got to see her accomplishment really blossom and come to a fruition. And then it was just taken from her.
Yeah. And I think I think there are a lot of difficult things about loss of people at any age, but some people are just taken too soon.
Yeah.
And there's all this unfulfilled promise for you, for your parents.
Yeah.
There's this unfulfilled promise for the world. And there's this unfulfilled promise for people she never had the opportunity to meet that she would have touched. And I think, it's hard to imagine what justice looks like when someone's lost. We talk about justice in the sense of criminal justice system.
Yeah.
But there actually is no justice.
No, there's not. When it comes to stuff like this, my sister wanted to live. My sister did not want to die. She did not choose death. Death was chosen for her. And that's what. Sorry, I get choked up.
It's okay. It's just your love for your sister. Tears.
She ran from that house because she wanted to live.
I wanted to ask you about that, sort of
Sure.
thinking about where her life went from the point that she decides to go to nursing school. She goes to nursing school, she graduates, she starts working. Along the way, she ends up in this relationship.
Yes,
And
she had just gotten out of a very long-term relationship with her ex-boyfriend now. Um, she was kind of blindsided by it. I'm not gonna talk bad about him. Relationships just don't work out. It is what it is. He's not a bad person. Um, but yeah, she had just gone out of a relationship with her ex-boyfriend Chris, and she found an apartment to move into. And then this man, saw that she had changed her status on Facebook to single. She had worked with Jeffrey back in Big Bear. She was bartender. He was a brewmaster. He was also a firefighter for Davy. And
that's a local jurisdiction, Davy.
yes, yeah, it's local to here. And yeah, he immediately. Let's see. I have my notes. She moved into her new apartment in December 2023. She started seeing Jeff in January 2024.
Mm.
Then by February, she was moved into his house.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then by March 17th, she was married.
By March 17th. So let me make sure I have this right.
Yeah.
December.
Mhm.
December, January. Essentially, she's moving into her own place.
Yeah.
Then within a matter of a month
A
or
month.
a little more than a month,
Yeah.
she's moved into his place.
Yep.
Is something like that normal for her?
Absolutely not, but
Oh.
it's very normal for him.
Okay.
Because guess what I've been doing over the last 3 months? I have been talking to his exes, and I have become very good friends with some of them. I know that would absolutely royally piss him off, which makes it so much better for me. Um, so I have learned a whole lot. And yeah, that's his MO. He, from what I've gathered, classic manipulating love bomber. Love bombs you, gets your guard down, moves you into his house, and the abuse immediately starts. Immediately. It's classic, isolation control abuse.
So, and is the underlying idea there, just in thinking about that sort of like model of love bombing, it is the idea that you're picking up on from talking to these women who are previously in this life, it's that it's all positive, it's all love bombing, but once you make one step that makes it harder for you to get away, then the real him comes out and traps you.
Oh, yeah, he absolutely does. He doesn't let you have financial freedom. He doesn't want you to work. He wants you in that house with him 24/7. You don't end up driving because
Wow.
you don't drive the correct way that he likes. He doesn't even let you cook because you're not going to cook the food the way that he likes it. He's a complete narcissist and a sociopath.
It's
through and through.
It sounds like coercive
And this
control.
has been like, in order to really unpack him and this whole situation, I mean, I tell people you would have to minimum give me like 3 hours because I can literally just info dump for 3 hours everything that I'm being told by these women and things that I've learned and researched. But I mean, this is not, because he's also ex-military. He's ex-Marine. He did 2 tours, Apparently, he's got PTSD, which I don't actually believe. He is a master liar and manipulator. He's done it his whole life, at his jobs, with women, his family. I don't believe it.
You just
I
can't trust
You can't
anything.
trust anything. And he is so good at it that I think he truly believes it himself, which is why he's so believable.
So
You know,
convincing.
these people tell me like he can talk his way out of anything. He is so good.
I'm curious about something. So you've found out all these things, after connecting with these women who were in his life, but you were also watching it from the outside. And one of the things that I've always wondered about in these situations, and some of this is my own naivety about things. I'm not a highly skeptical person. That's why I surround myself with really skeptical people. But looking at it from the outside, I wonder whether as a family member or even people who are close to her, that it was crystal clear what was happening. Because I've heard people say after Jessica died that there were really odd, weird, or mean things about him. But I
Mhm.
get the underlying impression from what you're saying that the reality is way worse than people could have guessed looking at it from the
100%. Oh, yeah, it's horrific. And we were not aware of any of these things until afterwards. I didn't know he was abusive until afterwards. I had a feeling that, it's just something was weird. He's kind of a jerk, all this stuff. And
The
definitely he's
timeline is a
controlling
little
her,
wacky.
the whole, you couldn't get a hold of my sister. She would answer your texts. She wouldn't pick up when you called. Like you would make plans and she would just go ghost. So you're thinking, okay, what's wrong with her? But then you come to find out, oh, it wasn't her, it was him because he doesn't let them on the phone. He doesn't like them talking for more than 2 minutes because if your attention is not on him 24/7, he gets extremely angry and defensive.
Sounds like almost like a fragile narcissist.
Oh, the man is extremely fragile, but he also has a very big ego, which is why he drives around in an F-250, bright red, on a 6-inch lift. And I know why, listen, at 43 years old, you're driving a vehicle like that for one specific reason. You have little man syndrome.
It's really interesting because there are like two kinds of narcissists. Well, there are not really two, there are four, but for the sake of this conversation, there are two kinds of narcissists. There's sort of like the classical narcissist. That's like the egotist, stares in the mirror, sees nothing but beauty, like has a hard time relating to people and just sort of like goes on. But the more common kind, but also the more subtle kind, is the soft narcissist, self centered, often very sensitive, which can come off as sweet at
Mhm.
times, even though it's not. Very, or maybe it is. I don't want to go that far, but they often come off as very soft. They're very fragile. And someone described it to me like this when I was in my 20s. She said, you imagine them like a balloon being filled with helium. The more their ego grows and grows, the thinner the outer layer of the balloon becomes, and the more simple it is for a pin to prick it and break the whole balloon. And this friend of mine, wise woman, who's one of my college advisors, said, stay away from those people, particularly when the balloon gets large, because it will burst. And they often seem, you know, like colorful balloons for a while, and it can be very deceptive. What was the fact that your sister moved in with him so quickly and married him quickly? Was that something that kind of like caught your attention,
I
that surprised you?
She never even told me that she was dating anyone.
Okay.
I knew. I got a text from her, uh, the 17th. I have it on my phone. I went back and looked, and she said, "Hey, so, don't tell mom, but I just got married." And she sent me some pictures of the ring and all this stuff. The last I knew, she was in an apartment
So this
And
is
she
like in this early
totally,
spring of
what the,
2024.
yeah, this was March 2024. So I'm thinking, this is not normal. This is so far from not normal. But at the same time, she, in all of her pictures and everything, she was the most happiest I've ever seen her in my life. Like on cloud nine,
During that
on,
time.
yeah,
I had a friend of
beyond,
mine recently say to me, we were dealing with a couple we know that have issues within our group, our friend group. And I pointed out a social media picture and I was like, they look so unbelievably happy in this picture. And he said to me, and I think he's right, he said that's what a lot of murder suicide pictures look like.
mhm,
Um, and, it really got me thinking about the idea that we, in my work in mental health, I run into this too, that for a certain segment of us, as things get worse in our life, the more we fight to put up a good
yeah,
image on social media,
yeah,
the more we fight to, it's almost like one of those things where if you fake it till you make it, where if
mhm,
I put this positive image in there, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff in self-help and other things that say that, like positive affirmation, do good things for yourself. But I think when you're in an abusive situation, there's no sort of, as the Southern phrase goes, there's no real putting lipstick on the pig. It's still a
no,
pig, even
yeah,
if you put lipstick on it. And I remember I was December of last year, I was out in Minneapolis and, um, you know, I was actually listening to Jim Schmidt, Gabby Petito's dad, talk. And while I was sitting there and I was facilitating the conversation, we were having a panel discussion and different speakers and I was facilitating. And it's a Q&A with the audience. And I get a text message and I look down on my phone. And this just, it highlighted for me as somebody who lives in this space of mental health and criminal justice, how absolutely inadequate I was. And I looked down on my watch and there's a message from a good friend of mine saying that her boyfriend had choked her, put his
mm,
hands around her neck and choked her. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I am facilitating this conversation on domestic violence, and I have no idea what to do to help. And, some of the things that Jim said to me afterwards, and he's amazing. He went in and got her a bunch of resources and like helped. Um, and was, like nobody really knows what to do. Um, you know, the best that you can do is kind of like try to wait and be there and send the message to the person that when they're ready to tell you what's going on, you're there creating a safe space, you know, making sure you're not demanding anything of them because they're probably getting demands there. And I thought that was great advice and it was really helpful advice in this situation, but it runs so contrary, I think, to everything we as people do with our loved ones. You either want to dive in and save and rescue the person, or you want to just step back completely and let them come to you. And it's really hard to figure out what to do in between.
oh, 100%, because, especially with, men like Jeffrey, who is just so dangerous and so violent and so physical. He also strangles women. He's done it. I'm pretty sure he did it to my sister. He did it to his ex girlfriend in 2021. She actually had an incident with him in 2020. That's when he was arrested. And then the incident in 2021, which in the hearing about it, his ankle monitor, he was trying to get it off. Obviously, the judge sided with us and the DA. so far, ankle monitors still on. We have restraining orders against him and everybody who submitted affidavits to the court. But in 2021, because of his military training and everything, he hits pressure points on your body. And he did that to Tiffany, and he hit her pressure points, and she just went down like a rock. And he just got on top of her and strangled her until she lost consciousness.
Yeah.
And
And they say, I think the number is, if a man puts his hands around a woman's neck and begins to in any way restrict their ability, same thing with like a chokehold, restrict
you're
their
playing with
ability to
death.
breathe.
That's playing with death.
Yeah, 7 times more likely to end up dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's such a fine line. Like, you, at that point, you're playing God with the
Yeah, it's
person
time to go.
that
Yeah.
to choke someone, to strangle someone to the point that they lose consciousness. You want them dead. It's
Or
not
at the
a
very least, to your point, like you made a great point there, you're playing God.
yeah.
And
It's control. It's all about dominance and control.
because if you think about it, like the ultimate control over someone, the most greatest control you could possibly have over another person is actually to take their life.
Yeah.
And so it's not a far journey from almost taking your life to taking your life.
Yeah.
And I think I have a hard time in my head. Maybe there's a circumstance where this exists but it certainly seems to me that the vast majority, certainly male on female domestic violence, is about control. That at the end of the day, it really comes down to control. One of the things I found quite odd about the entire story, and I know news reports are very limited in what they share, but, he had actually called 911
Yes.
for some reason. And, I read through it.
Oh, I know the reason. I absolutely know the reason why that he
I was going to
called.
ask you, why?
Because he's done that before. He calls first because he gets
He's
to
afraid.
initiate his narrative before someone else, before the victim gets to call and say, like, please help me. He knows, because he was a firefighter, that first call is very important.
Yeah, it sets the tone. It's one of our
Exactly.
cognitive biases.
He did the same thing to Tiffany. He takes your phone so you can't call. He takes your keys so you can't leave. And he beats the crap out of you. But he never touches your face. Why? Because when the cops do get there, you don't have marks on your face. That's the one thing he specifically never touches, is a woman's face.
So that is something that's actually happened before, where he has called, whether it's the authorities or someone else, to make sure his story was the first story that was heard.
Yep. He has done that before.
Oh,
yeah. Because he called 911 and said, my wife is having a mental break, which, by the way, he's said the same thing before about Tiffany. And, not long after that, one of his neighbors called just a few minutes later and said, I hear a woman screaming for help, and screaming that her husband is trying to kill her. And that is now the second woman who has run out of that house screaming. Tiffany did the same thing in 2020. His ex-girlfriend, Tiffany, in 2020, he attacked her, and he pushed her against the wall, and he said something along the lines of, like, one of us is going to jail today, and it's going to be you. And he punched himself in his face to the point, like, his nose was bloody and bleeding. Like, if you look at his arrest mugshot from 2020, his nose is busted. He did that to himself. Tiffany is, like, teeny, teeny, tiny girl. There is no way she is going to be decking a man, a grown man, 6 feet, whatever, in the face and leaving. No. She ran from that house screaming. My sister ran from that house screaming. My sister was not crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the, like, I think you're hitting on a challenge for a lot of people who are, and there are going to be people who are listening who fit this bill. A lot of people who are, experiencing domestic violence, the reason why people play these games around control is because they wouldn't do it if it didn't work so often.
It works so well.
It's not that there's anything really wrong with domestic violence victims, even though people work hard to make them feel that way. But one of the real challenges is often a domestic abuser will lay down traps. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your kids, your reputation, your job. You're going to have nowhere to live. Like, pick your different thing. And so there's a lot of fear, or there's just stigma, right? There's stigma around being abused. We in society do not really, I don't think we extend the grace to people who are the victims of abuse that we do in other situations. So there are a lot of reasons not to tell. But one of the things that happens with police, and I don't think this is always a bad thing in an investigation, but it's terrible in these situations, is this idea of anchoring bias. Investigators tend to rely on the information that is the most vivid, recent, emotionally striking. And if you are manipulative and you know how to manipulate those situations and you can get in there first, it allows these like cycles of abuse to go on and unchecked.
Oh, there's
and it
a
reinforces to the victim, like, there's no point in me going and asking for help.
Yeah.
But you were saying, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was saying, no, you're right. They know exactly what they're doing, because I have calls to service to his address in Coral Springs. And from 2017 to, let's see, 9/27, there has been 75 calls to service to his address. 75.
Wow.
And,
well, it's not
various.
Trees.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it would be nice if it was that. But no, a lot of it is it's just such, they know him very well in Coral Springs. Coral Springs PD, if you bring up Jeffrey Evans, they know who he is. They're like, oh yeah, no, we know him very well. Because they've been out to his house 75 times. And a good chunk of that is domestics.
Any idea why those didn't result in charges?
I don't know. You would have to ask PD. And then I know the charges that were dropped in 2020, they were dropped because he manipulated Tiffany, and he basically kind of like low-key threatened her. So, she did. I hold no grudges at all. She did what she thought was best for her in the situation that she was in. And, you don't think, oh, well, oh, geez, I don't know, like 5 years from now, someone's going to die. So I should probably keep, you don't know. Like, if you have any idea, like, it would probably be different. But who actually thinks that something is going to happen like that? It's just so crazy.
Yeah. And I know, like, there are plenty of people, good people who carry that kind of guilt. They feel responsible, whether it's domestic violence.
And she does feel guilty. And I've had conversations with her about it. And I said, don't feel guilty. This is nowhere near your fault. I said, Tiffany, you did the best that you could in the situation that you were in at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when someone makes a choice, because it is a choice, like, people's emotions get out of control, but to abuse someone, to yell at someone, to hit someone, 99% of the time, brain tumors aside and psychosis aside, is a choice, there's really only one person who's truly ultimately responsible for it, because whatever happens in a domestic violence situation can't happen if they don't make a choice. Now, there are other people who have a responsibility, right? Law enforcement has a responsibility. People who are mandatory reporters have a responsibility. But I think a victim's only responsibility is to save themselves, to
Yeah.
do whatever they can to save
Yeah.
themselves. I'm sorry to hear that she's feeling that.
Yeah. I think it's a very human response to a
Mm,
horrific situation. And she is a very kind person. Me and her have become such close friends. And I value her friendship tremendously. And she's been looking out for me this whole time. Because she's Jessica's age. She's
mm,
38. Jessica was 38. So
mm.
I think it's very relatable. And especially in situations like that, you just think, I'm sure she thinks like, holy crap, that could have been me. I think every one of the women that has been in his life now are probably like, holy crap, that could have been me.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them hadn't already thought he's eventually going to kill me or kill someone else,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the cops, because talking to law enforcement about their frustration sometimes with the limitations of the laws,
Yeah.
they've said to me that person is going to kill someone.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just tragic that our system, from a systems perspective, that our system cannot be improved, one, to deal with it, that we probably don't spend enough time educating families and giving them resources, educating law enforcement so they know what to do. You know, that video from Gabby Petito's, I don't know if you've seen it, but the one out in Utah where she and her boyfriend are stopped, and watching those police officers kind of miss what was
Yeah.
just so obvious in front of them just screams to me we should be spending millions and millions of dollars doing this. And it would be one thing, I cannot think of the last time I saw the words domestic violence on the front page of the Washington Post or the New York Times, but we're talking about like 13, 14, 15 million people experiencing it per year.
Yeah.
Per year.
It's wild to think because it's not talked about, but it happens so frequently.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Every person that you talk to, especially, now, every single person that I have talked to has been affected by domestic violence, either from themselves or someone that they know. Every single person.
Right. And that excludes even the perpetrators, right?
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I think about that like often, like what's going on the walls around me that I don't know about, or what,
Mhm.
you know, my mom, I mentioned to you before. I remember when we were kids, there was one day we had these neighbors. None of the kids in the neighborhood liked the stepdad, but there were like three girls, I think, at the house. And there was one boy, and they were around universe of our age. One day I came home and the girls are all at our house. And I'm like, we don't live like nearby. We're not like neighbors. And they just rush past my family members and go into the house. Next thing I know, um, their father, because they were living with their stepfather and their mother, is there, and they just disappear. Later, I would find out the dad was um, sexually abusing some of the girls. And one of the things that really struck me, and I know as a kid, like even as a kid, I felt bad about it, but I know as a kid, but it was just striking to me that I could walk the halls of that house over and over and over again. And like in retrospect, there's some things, but only in retrospect, only in hindsight, and not have any clue. And that just screams to me like nobody is that good. That just screams to me that we're not arming people with the tools that they need to be able to
Yeah.
identify these things.
No,
I
I
wonder
agree.
why.
I'm probably so unprepared. Even now, with the amount of research and conversations I've had with people, I'm still unprepared when it comes to stuff like this. Because this should be talked about in colleges, in high schools, because abuse starts
Middle school.
in middle school, in high school, in college. I mean, my friend Sarah, she was in very bad domestic violence situation when she was 17 with her
Mm,
boyfriend. 17. This is a
mm,
kid.
mm.
She has a big scar on her head now where her hair doesn't grow because he fractured her skull. He beat her so bad. And
Wow.
do you know what happened to him? Nothing. Nothing. Because she's from a small town in Pennsylvania and he was star quarterback, football, whatever, whatever, and they didn't want to ruin his life. The
Oh,
police did not want to ruin his life.
words that I've never heard applied to a woman, by the way.
Yeah,
Didn't want to ruin her life. I've
nope,
never heard that one. I've heard
me neither.
didn't want to ruin his life. I wonder whether some of it is really gendered because most of the victims are women. Um, you know, there's this joke, not to make light of this particular topic, but this joke that people tell, which they say, if men got pregnant, you would be able to get what was it? If men got pregnant, you would be able to get diaphragms and
Mhm.
all this other stuff out of a vending machine, right?
Yeah,
And I wonder whether there is some element to truth there because ultimately, even as women grow, and even though it's sort of going backwards right now, like if you look at places like the House of Representatives or other places, we have fewer women now in
mhm,
powerful positions. But even as women get more power, um, it doesn't change the fact that in the highest and highest positions, whether it's in media or politics or other places, they tend to be controlled by men, including our
yeah,
lawmakers, including the people who shape the things. And I just wonder whether part of the reason why we're not talking about something that's so clearly an epidemic that kills, you know, tons of people. There's an article, I don't know if you've seen it yet, that literally came out today. And or maybe it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. And this article that came out yesterday basically said that between 2019 and 2024, the number of domestic violence homicides in the United States, on average, has risen from 1,065 to 2,339, way past the population rate. And I think, and that doesn't even count the millions being abused. I just have a
yeah,
hard time imagining that if 2,300 white middle class suburban men were ending up dead from anything. Frankly, if 2,300 puppies were ending up
yeah.
dead, um, it would be on the front page of the New York Times.
I agree.
I wonder what we can do about that. Maybe more voices like yours.
I don't know, but I know for the rest of my life, however long that's going to be, this is what I'm going to be doing. And when I'm ready and able to talk about this and not get very emotional about it, I'm trying really hard. I hope I'm doing okay. It's really hard for me to talk about this, but I do plan and want to go to high schools and talk
What do
about
you
this.
what do you think's wrong about being emotional about it? It was your sister.
Um, well, it just I don't like being emotional in front of people and stuff like that. I'm very private. So it's just and then when I get emotional, my brain shuts off and it's hard for me to process rational, logical thought. So I try to tamper it down. And when I talk about things like this or do podcasts or anything like that, I I turn off the I try to at least.
Give yourself some grace.
I know. I know. I'm very hard on myself.
Yeah. You're allowed to feel.
I feel too much though.
There is no such thing. You lost your sister.
I did.
I'm sorry.
I talked to her on the phone and 3 hours later she was dead. And I have to live with that last conversation for the rest of my life. And all the shoulda, woulda, coulda, how that conversation should have been different, how I should have told her, "No, Jessica, don't stay there," that night when she said, "Oh, I'm gonna we had a talk and, you know, we're gonna talk again in the morning. He's gonna I'm staying here. He's gonna let me stay here the night. And then, like, I'll call you in the morning, Britt." Basically saying, they were gonna talk, kind of figure out the issue because, infidelity with him, my sister was adamant that he was cheating, which, surprise, surprise, he's a compulsive cheater. He can't help it. He's like a sex addict. He's addicted to porn, stuff like that, which she did obviously not know going into this because she got married in like a month. So yeah, that last conversation just wrecks my soul
Do you
every day.
remember the thing you said about his ex-girlfriend feeling guilt because of your sister? I'd say the same thing to you in that last call. You're doing the
Extreme.
best you could. You were doing the best you could with what you had.
I didn't know that was gonna be the last time I talked to her. And I just figured, I was like, okay, well, you know, we'll all just figure it out in the morning. Hopefully she leaves him. We can go over there. We can get the dog and her cats and, put her in a hotel or get her an apartment. Like, it's totally fine. It's not a big deal. And then that was at just before 6 p.m. Our call was just under 2 minutes. And that was the last time I talked to my sister. And
I don't.
3 hours later, she was gone. And we had detectives knocking on our door at 3:30 in the morning.
I don't know that any words would have changed the outcome.
I don't think so. If I told her, "Jessica, don't stay there. Jessica, you need to leave," she was gonna stay there, because these women don't know that they're about to die.
Right. Or
They don't think these men are capable. Like, yes, he hits me. Yes, he's abusive. Yes, this, but he's not. He's not.
Yeah, let me tell you the alternative version of that story, which is you tell her she should leave. She decides to leave. And he kills her anyway because he had decided he was going to kill her.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's only one person who's responsible. There's only one person, and it's not you.
I know.
It's just that you love her so much.
So much.
I get it. Really.
I love my sister more than anyone. I'll love her more than anyone in my lifetime or any lifetime after. And he took her from me.
Have you guys been able to find out anything about, he's been charged with the domestic battery because he had admitted to holding her against her will before she ran away. Have you found out the investigation is still going on?
So, yeah, as of right now, the investigation is still ongoing. So, what ended up happening is when the lead detective got on the scene, and it was crazy. I'm so sorry. I'm getting tissues. Um, it was huge. There was like helicopters. It was massive. Um, because she was found face down, naked in the canal. It was either, again, I don't know for sure, either behind their house or a neighbor's house because Coral Springs is just a
Right.
bunch of canals
Yeah.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's
So,
kind of like a giant backyard or woods behind
yeah,
the thing.
yeah. So there's video of her um running through someone's backyard, climbing a fence, and then making it over the fence and then continue running. And that's the last, as far as I know, the last images of my sister. Um, you know, to flee, to run from somewhere, to flee naked. You are not running away because you're crazy. You are you are running from fear. That was
Right.
fear.
Right. Right.
And it absolutely wrecks me to know that that video is out there and anybody and everybody can just pull that up on the internet and watch my sister.
It's made it into the public internet?
Yeah, yeah, they were playing it on the news stations when
Okay.
they were doing their news segments.
Good boy.
Obviously it's blurred, thankfully. Um, but yeah,
The blur doesn't help as much
it
when you
doesn't
know it's your loved one.
it doesn't.
Yep.
That's not something you want to see as her
No.
sister.
No.
Her being found face down naked in a canal in that nasty, disgusting water and had to be seen like that by probably dozens and dozens and dozens of people is so dehumanizing. And it just, I feel so much anger for her.
And clearly so much love for her.
Yeah.
It's very obvious. Your
And I
tears.
do these and I speak for her because she can't speak for herself anymore. And she would do the same thing for me without hesitation. My sister told me once that I'm the strongest person that she knows. I don't feel really strong, but I'm trying.
You are.
Thank you.
I was gonna say your tears really are a testament, a tribute to your sister, and they really show how deep your love is. You mentioned something to me, Brittany, where you said that, you know, you started out with a sister and he made you an only child.
He did.
And, it just reminds me about what we were talking about earlier, that concept of like losing your sibling and losing a person. Losing your parents is hard enough. And just know from that personal experience, there's nothing like it. But there's something about siblings. And I had mentioned this to you before, that there's something about siblings. They're the only ones who get to look at the world the same way you do, at the same height you do, at the same, the same perspective you have, and grow up with the same things. And there's a bond between siblings that I think is hard to imagine. And just one thing I wanted to say to you, I know you may feel like you shouldn't have to show your emotions, but I do think more important than not crying in situations, I think it's more important to show your love. And I feel like you've done that and you've been
Thank
vulnerable.
you.
I appreciate it. I'm honored by it.
Thank you.
To share it with people.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Well, I wanted to give you a chance. Like, this has been sort of like a profound conversation for me. And I hope we stay in touch, and I hope we get to
Oh, we
help each
absolutely,
other
we
on
will
this
be.
battle. Okay. All right.
We're going to talk about books,
Right. Yes. Fantasy books, Lord of the
fantasy
Rings.
books. Yeah.
And we had been talking about that before. And that was like one of the interesting things I was telling you about Anderson Cooper and his loss of his brother, when he was young, and Stephen Colbert and his loss of his brother and his father when he was really young. And the thing that brought Colbert and Cooper together was Stephen Colbert wrote a magazine article, and you're a big Lord of the Rings fan, and he quoted J.R.R. Tolkien when he said, "What punishments of God are not gifts." And I know in the moment you're in right now, it feels like there are no gifts. But what my prayer for you will be is that a year from now, 6 months from now, or in a moment, somewhere in the future, I think you'll always hate losing your sister. But I hope you learn at some point to love what you get from it, that allows you to bring joy and help people. We don't know if, as we have this conversation, that there's somebody who's in a situation of domestic violence who is listening to this conversation and is making the choice to get out of it, and that your words are helping save that person, which means your sister saved that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope someday you'll get a chance to look back at it and know that her legacy is living on through the good works. You said in the beginning your sister wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And I think she will through you. So many
If
people.
this situation, if me speaking out, if people hearing Jessica's story, if I can help one person get out, if hearing Jessica's story helps someone make a decision to leave and not go back, the average times a woman goes back to her abuser is 7. My sister never made it to 1.
Mm.
It doesn't take 7 times for a man to kill you.
Mm.
It just takes 1. If you think that it's not going to happen to you, it can happen to you. It happens to women every single day. It's happening right now. It's going to happen tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now. It's been happening for thousands of years. Going back only puts you in danger. They're not going to change the "I'm sorries," the "oh, it won't happen again," "oh, look at what you made me do, you make me crazy," all this stuff. "Oh, it's you, it's not me." It's all manipulation. Don't fall for it. Us women are just naturally predisposed by our emotions. We're very emotional driven women. We're caregivers. That's just how we are. And these men who are love bombers and manipulators and narcissists and all this stuff, they know that. They know exactly what to tell you to come back. And every single time you do, you are scratching that little thing in his brain called his ego. And every time you go back, you are boosting it because he is winning every single time you go back. And he gets to lay his hands on you again and again and again. And, one time it's just going to go too far.
let me ask you something as we sort of wrap up that kind of ties back to the point you're making right now. As you reflect on all that's happened, and you're sort of speaking to the people in those kinds of situations that your sister was in, what's your hope and your dreams for those people? The ones sort of walking in the shoes that your sister was only 6 months ago or 5 months ago.
I want women like my sister to know that there is life outside of the situation that they think they cannot get out of. It's not the end of the world to leave. I know it might feel like it, and that you have been told that you are nothing without them. You will be nothing without them. Trust me, your life is worth more than your relationship with your abuser. And starting from scratch is going to be hard. It's going to be insanely hard, but there is help out there. I know it's hard to ask for help. I know it's embarrassing. You feel embarrassed. I know my sister did. But you have to start somewhere for yourself. And leaving and not going back does not make you, oh, I'm ruining my life. That makes you the strongest you've ever been.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. It takes so much strength. And I think as for those of us who are not in the domestic abuse situations, but love people who are, just remind ourselves, like when we become impatient or frustrated, that it takes so much strength. And that our role in all of this is to sort of hoe the field, to set the groundwork, to prepare the runway. So when the person is ready to escape, they have a safe place to land.
Yes.
Well, my friend, thank you. I know we'll stay in touch and we'll stay connected. And I'm hoping for some more justice in your sister's case, but
yes, I can't. There's some things I've been told. I just can't share them as of yet because I was asked not to share them by the detective. But when I can speak about it, you will know.
yeah,
You'll be among the first.
and I
to
won't be
know.
shy about sharing whenever you're ready for me to share. Right? All right.
I'm just patiently waiting for all this to come to something. The justice system is not the most reliable, but you have to stay positive and think that this is not going to be one of those situations. It's going to be one of those situations, and justice will be done. And he hopefully has put his hands on the last woman he'll ever do.
I do it often, but to quote Julie Murray, Murray's sister, the one thing you can't do is lose hope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
this is
a
great.
little word to the wise.
Oh, yeah.
The prison system, there's two things that the prison system does not like. One of them is child molesters, and the other one is men who prey on women. And that makes me feel much better.
It's a good spot to run.
The little things in life, Jason.
Yeah, no, I get it. Thanks for joining me for this conversation with Brittany. If you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. For deeper conversations with our guests and live conversations with other listeners, you can also join us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/the Silver Linings Handbook. I'm Jason Blair, And this is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. We'll see you guys all